Hi, I'm Shiruz Raufi and I'm one of the co-creators of Flite. The purpose of this video is to give a brief demonstration of what Flite does and how you can use it in your music. So once you've downloaded Flite from our website at wavia.co, you basically have two modes in which you can operate: create and play. You can switch from create to play mode using the toggle at the very top of the UI. Flite Play mode is completely free to use, and as the name suggests, Flite Play enables you to browse and play over 200 presets that come bundled with the application. The included sounds are a varying bunch, from drums, guitars and sequences to synths, pads and bass. As a free play user, you also get access to a 20-minute feature-limited trial of Create mode. Let's check out some of the bundled presets. Each preset comes with 8 combination controls called macros. Let's check some of them out. We've put a lot of careful thought into how the macros are assigned, and each control is designed to give maximal tonal impact. Let's hear some more presets. Each preset also comes with mod wheel and pitch bend assignments. As mentioned earlier, Play is fully free, but also comes with a 20-minute trial of Flite Create. Flite Create requires purchase. It's a fully featured plugin with 4 multi-samplers, a synth engine, multiple LFOs, envelopes, and 7 multi-effects. Think of Flite Create as a palette for creating unique presets and instruments. With the paid upgrade, all the trial limitations in Flite Play are removed. You can import in your own samples, save presets, and of course settings are retained each time you open the UI. You can switch between the Play and Create skins using the toggle at the very top of the UI. Flite Create can be purchased outright from our site wavia.co, or you can upgrade from Flite Play by clicking into your account settings and following the directions from the site. Flite can be installed on up to 2 machines. To unlock your account once you've purchased, simply add your email username and your password, and the app will automatically unlock. Let's dive deeper into Flite Create. At the heart of Flite are 4 identical multi-samplers, a synth engine, and a noise generator. Flite ships with 2.5 gig of bundled multi-samples. These are categorized according to their instrument type. I've multi-sampled many of my favorite instruments, and as you can see, we've put a lot of effort into the accuracy of the recordings. Think of these multi-sampled instruments as oscillators in their own right. You can select from bass, chord, drum kits, effects, guitars, keys, loops, and much more. And as we mentioned earlier, these multi-samplers are completely identical, so you can select different banks from each sampler. Each layer can be turned on and off by clicking the switch in the top left. So let's hear Flite with just one multi-sampler turned on. Each of the 6 voice layers comes with its own individual EQ. Let's click into one. The EQ has 3 bands with selectable frequency, Q, and gain for each band. You can also select the curve type. Within each module, you can also adjust the tuning, ±1 octave, and panning hard left and right. You can also adjust the level, and double-clicking any parameter returns it to its default position. Once you click into the sampler, you can adjust each individual sample's loop settings, the start position, fade in, fade out, end position, loop start, loop on or off, release, and loop fade. Each sample has its own gain, pan, coarse and fine tunings, and of course root settings and key trigger. You can layer samples vertically across a velocity range and horizontally across a note range. Finally, the sampler's global settings are displayed across the top. Here you can also set the tuning ±4 octaves. And you can get access to the EQ settings from here too. Let's clear the sample bank and load some of our own sounds. Flite Create will load WAV files, AIF files and MP3s. You can simply drag and drop files directly into the sampler. Once you've dragged your samples in, you can store them as a proprietary monolith, a finst file that's only readable by Flite. This sets the stage for you to create your own protected multi-sampled instruments. Finst monoliths can be loaded from a factory or user location. The other three multi-sample layers operate in precisely the same way as the one which we've just shown you. Now let's navigate across and do a deep dive on a synth engine. Let's load the default preset and bake from scratch. The synth engine has 3 oscillators, each can be set to analog or wavetable. Virtual analog mode has sine, triangle, saw and pulse wave shapes. Each of the oscillators operate identically. Switching to wavetable mode gives access to 15 more wave shapes. Clicking the settings icon in any module opens the deeper parameter settings. Here you can edit and craft each oscillator individually. Level, pan, fine tuning, and octave up and down. You can switch oscillators on and off by clicking the buttons in the top left corners, and in the bottom left menu we have the OSMod modes for each oscillator. Let's try exponential FM. Let's add exponential FM to the second and third oscillators. As you can see, there are several OSMod modes in Flite. Let's try unison on all 3 oscillators and adjust the spread. So now, let's look at some of the other OSMod modes. Let's start with FM. We're going to switch the oscillator type to wavetable and select one of the 15 wave shapes that come with Flite. By changing the shape type and modulating the amount and ratio, there's scope for a wide range of sounds. Let's close the synth settings and move to the final layer, the noise generator. This voice has a level control, a noise type selector, a stereo mono switch, and a width control. Let's switch to the envelope section. Flite has 3 envelopes. The amp envelope controls all 6 layers and is a simple ADSR design. Each envelope can also be assigned to virtually any modulation target. The modulation targets appear at the bottom of the screen. You can select the modulation target from a drop-down menu and set the amount, bypass or delete the target. Envelopes 2 and 3 are also 4-stage ADSR and again are fully assignable to the same modulation targets as the amp envelope. Let's pick out some presets that have envelopes assigned. Here, envelope 2 is assigned to the filter cutoff. Envelope 3 is completely identical to envelope 2 and can also be freely assigned. Let's now look at the 3 LFOs in Flite Create. Flite has 15 LFO wave shapes per LFO, from sine, triangle, pulse and square through to some more unconventional wave shapes. The LFO rate can be adjusted from 1/8 of your project tempo through to 64 times. The LFO rate can also be unsynced with a free value in Hertz. The delay setting introduces a synced or unsynced LFO delay. And finally, the LFO can be triggered on the first note or every note press. Assigning LFOs is mega straightforward. Let's look at this. Clicking the Assign button brings up to 8 modulation targets. These can be selected via the same menu drop-down we saw earlier. The amount can be adjusted by click-dragging the integer value. All 3 LFOs behave absolutely identically and can be switched by pressing their appropriate tab. When a parameter is assigned to an LFO, you'll see some visual feedback underneath that parameter. Let's now move on to the note and mod sequencers. These are switched on by clicking the button in the top left tab. Click the Settings tab to bring up the step programmer. Let's load some pre-rolled sequences. The sequencer step length can be adjusted from 32 steps down to 1 step, with visual feedback demonstrating the step length. Let's deep dive into the sequencer settings. Clicking the Amount tab randomizes step data, and steps can be muted on/off by clicking them across the top. Clicking Trigger will randomize step mutes. Pitch, gate and velocity data can be written by clicking into the grid. You can toggle between pitch, gate and velocity by clicking into the side menu. Fades can be created by click dragging horizontally. Holding Shift while click dragging up and down adjusts relative data points. And a large number of sequencer parameters can be assigned to macros or modulators. In this example, the sequencer rate is mapped to a CC-controlled macro. Let's look at some of the other sequencer parameters, like swing and trigger. When key track is enabled, the key track note starts a sequence at the same note irrespective of what key is pressed. This is especially useful for creating rhythmic loops. The fundamental pitch can be adjusted from 1 through to 127. Let's load some more presets and look at some deeper sequencer functionality. The sequencer has a useful scale capping functionality. By selecting a mode from the drop-down menu, all note data will be capped automatically to that mode or scale. The note data can still be randomized, but will still be capped to the selected scale. You can also cap to within a key selection and choose to round data up or down. We're currently adding more scales and modes as we speak for future product updates. Now, let's have a look at the modulation or parameter sequencer. You can assign it by clicking the Assign button and selecting the modulation target from the drop-down menus below. Let's check out an example with filter cutoff data sequenced. As with a note sequencer, we can click to draw in the parameter steps. Let's increase the sequencer rate and bring it back to where it was. Now, let's add some more assignable parameters by clicking into the modulation target boxes. Let's modulate the coarse tuning of the sampler. Now we can create a crescendo with both filter cutoff data and sampler coarse tuning. Let's adjust the rate and add more parameters. Let's modulate noise level too. We'll drop the resonance a bit. And as with a note sequencer, we can also randomize data amounts and trigger mutes. We can again also have the sequencer trigger on the first note or every note, add smoothing to the automation data, and create more natural musical fades. Finally, we can adjust smoothing time and tension for more pronounced data step programming. Let's come out of the settings and look at the visual feedback when the mod sequencer is engaged. Visual note sequence feedback is also available in play mode. Let's now look at the filter settings. Flite has 2 selectable filters, low pass, band pass and high pass modes with a 24 and 12 dB slope. Filters can be switched from modern to analog modeling modes. Finally, each filter model has its own unique resonance curve and filter drive. Let's check out the filters in action on a real 303 sample. Each of Flite's voices can be routed to either of the 2 filters. Clicking the Routing tab brings up the filter mixer. Each layer can be routed directly to the amp or each of the respective filters. And finally, filters can be stacked in parallel or series. So filter 1 can be routed directly into filter 2 and subsequently into the amp. So by combining, for example, bandpass filters, a vast variety of effects can be achieved. Let's now look at the multi-effects section. Flite has 3 effect slots with the same selectable effects in each drop-down. Let's load up some presets with cool effects. The effects engine includes granular reverb licensed from Sine Vibes. Here we've assigned the granular mix level to its own macro. Clicking the Effects Settings tab brings up the unique controls for that effect type. There are 6 selectable effects types from chorus to flanger, lo-fi, reverb and delay, so the signal passes through effect section 1, 2 and 3 respectively. Let's open up the settings and look at more effects parameters. Delay rates can be synced or unsynced, with each channel having its own rate. Any of the individual effects parameters can also be routed to the macros. So now let's look at the Modulation Overview and Macro Overview. Clicking any parameter label will show the modulation sources and macros it's assigned to. Let's load the default preset and look at some macro assignments. Here, the filter cutoff is assigned to macro 1. Clicking on the label shows the macro targets, and hovering over the modulated parameter shows the macro it's assigned to. The parameter will move in time with the macro. In fact, any modulated parameter in Flite will move according to the action of its modulator. Let's load a preset with a mod sequencer and see this in action. In this preset, the mod sequencer is controlling the cutoff of filter 2. We can see it moving in time with the mod sequencer data. And if a parameter is assigned to an LFO, you'll see the arc around that parameter move in time with the LFO rate. Now let's take a closer look at the Macro Overview window. Clicking the Macro Overview switch reveals the assigned targets and enables up to 4 parameters to be assigned to each macro from a drop-down list. You can also set the minimum and maximum range a parameter is controlled by a macro. You can also bypass or delete entirely an assignment by clicking the on-off button and the trash icon. Let's look at the Modulation Overview. You can assign up to 8 parameters to each modulator by clicking the plus symbol and picking your parameter from a drop-down list. Clicking the Assign button next to the LFO and envelope section reveals a modulation matrix for each target. You can also set the modulation target by clicking and selecting from a drop-down menu in these boxes. And as we mentioned earlier, when a parameter is being modulated, you can see a visual reference to the modulation in real time. And this comes in especially handy if, for example, you've assigned a parameter to the mod sequencer or to an LFO and you want an immediate visual representation of what's being controlled. For example, in this instance, the filter 2 cutoff from the mod sequencer. Let's look at the settings menu. Here you can resize the UI and view your account data, and the voice menu where you can select the number of voices, and in legato and mono mode, the voice glide. In the footer, you can view MIDI activity and set the output volume up to plus 20 dB and down to infinity dB. Let's now look at the preset browser. On the left hand side, you can view presets per collection with packs coming very soon and the factory and user directories. Remember that as a Play user, you'll be free to audition and play all the presets that come with the factory library and any forthcoming packs, but that you can't save your own presets. Saving presets is exclusively for paid Create users. As a Create user, you can dive fully into the editor and select your own sample layers, and, of course, have full creator access to the multi-mode synth engine. We'd like to say thanks for sticking with us through this tutorial. We hope you enjoy Flite, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email them directly to us at info@wavia.co.